Well, hi everyone. I'm Andy Asher. I'm editor at BloomerBoomer. Now, if you are at or nearing retirement age, at some point you'll be asking yourself the question, now what? Never easy to answer for tons of reasons, like how will you get compensated, whether it's for appreciation or what you're doing or paid for what you're doing. Now, there is a big divide between what you think you want to do next and then how to do it. So that's what we're going to be talking about today with Olga Mizrahi, who has been getting a lot of attention lately with her vision of how we can live and win in a world of increasing choice by becoming the clear, unique fit. Now, she wrote a book that we are going to be talking about, and it's called The Gig is Up. Thrive in the gig economy where old jobs are obsolete and freelancing is the future. Now, we will find out more about what that means and how it can apply to you. We'll talk with Olga in just a moment. But this is part of the Plus 50 Good Life movement, a project of the BloomerBoomer.com publication. We'll be right back with Olga Mizrahi right after this. Well, our guest is Olga Mizrahi, who teaches how we can live and win in a world of increasing choice by becoming the clear, unique fit. Olga, thank you so much for joining us. Your book is just in perfect timing because there's so much in here that I want to learn from. And as I told you before we got started, I'm in the process of writing a book about bucket lists. And in many cases, a bucket list is what we want to do next. And that might be a dream job or a dream career or being an entrepreneur. So the book is perfect timing.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, listen, I obviously there's a lot of things I want to ask you about, and the subtitle of the book is How Old Jobs Are Obsolete and Freelancing is the Future. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, I think, first of all, whenever you talk about the gig economy, we have to start with the term because there's a lot of confusion around the term, right? Is it just freelance jobs? Is it temp and contract work? I mean, even if people are hired offline, are they all giggers now? Does everybody just have a project these days? And kind of the answer is yes to all of the above. You can think of gig economy as something that is project-based or on-demand services that really can be provided by anyone. So even though Uber is now a verb, that doesn't mean that we're all going to become Uber drivers. In fact, when we look at the top 50 industries in that are hiring freelancers, many of them are obvious, such as computer and IT and administrative, but some of them are less obvious, such as medical and health and project management and educational.
Yeah. Well, the other thing that I was intrigued by is that you discuss put the best version of yourself front and center. And that sounds easier than done sometimes because you have to figure out, okay, how am I going to separate myself from all the other people who are out there that maybe do something like me?
Right. And so there's also a ton of anxiety in this new way of work. One out of
Absolutely.
every three of us identify as part of the gig economy right now. And that doesn't necessarily mean full time. It could just be a side gig, right? In fact, I don't think I know anybody in their 20s that doesn't have a side gig.
Is
But
that right? Yeah.
increasingly, it's also boomers. Actually, I think the last time I went to LAX, my Uber driver was a boomer, now that I think about it.
Huh.
And they had retired, and I'd asked them, because of course, I'm just a curious person when it comes to all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I
So
said,
I take it you're sort of on the verge of being a boomer. Is that it?
on the verge of being a boomer. I'm actually a Gen Xer, I guess you would say. I'm
Are
in the
you?
sandwich generation.
Yeah, well, so you can take this. Well, yeah, and a lot of us are part of the sandwich generation and boomers at the same time. So you can since you know about this, it's great because you can also apply that to people who are at or nearing retirement, and whenever that might be. For most of us, it's sometime after 50.
Right. And for some people right now, it might be something where you're feeling pushed out of a particular career as well,
This is true.
when you're not ready to retire. You still want to be out there. And so, how do you, like you said, put the best version of yourself? And how to do that, quite frankly, goes back to a lot of marketing 101. Some things that are easy to say, but harder to do, especially when it's about you. I think that in being in marketing for over 20 years, the number one mistake that we see people make is, and companies too, by the way, is talk about themselves in ers. And what I mean by that is better, faster, stronger, cheaper, and it falls flat because it doesn't get anybody's attention. You really have to hone in on what I call the est, and that is, what is your best? It all comes down to answering that crazy question, why choose you? Such an anxiety filled question, but when you can actually get to that place where you feel confident in that answer, you will stand out.
That is so true. But getting there can be so difficult because, in many cases you were identified by where you worked, and now you're having to identify yourself by what you do as an individual without the clout of a company behind you. So that is a really key question to get answered.
That cloud of that company, though, that can stay with you in terms of branding, right? If
True.
I'm out there and I'm a new vitamins brand, right? And nobody has ever heard of these vitamins, what am I going to do to make you want to buy my multivitamin over someone else's? I'm going to compare to the large brand and then give you a reason, a benefit to choose me, right? Even though you've never heard of me.
That's a good
And
point. Yes, I see that.
so if I worked at Disney, you bet that there's somebody at Disney. Maybe it's my coworker, maybe it's my former boss, maybe it's a client that I worked with that maybe can provide me a recommendation on a platform like LinkedIn and mention Disney.
Yeah, that's a great way. I was thinking about that, and I'm glad you brought that up. Of all of the issues that you're having to deal with from the time that you make the actual break from wherever you are to being part of the gig economy, let's say on a full-time basis, is there one big issue that really stands out above all the others?
In what way, Andrew?
Well, I'm thinking of the stresses, the concerns, the worries, the
Ah, you're
struggle.
thinking of all these things that you maybe aren't going to be thinking of as you go into this new economy,
Absolutely,
new way of work.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
I think the one that really slaps people over the head more than anything is, in some cases, loneliness,
Aha.
because you are now coming from an environment where maybe you went to the same place every day and you had a culture there and you had friends there. And now you're working from your home, Starbucks, somewhere behind a laptop. And how do you gain that sense of community back?
That's
So
really
that's one.
true. Yeah, you do miss that. And, I'm one of those who has discovered actually the lesson. Sometimes you don't know what you don't know. And I get your book helps people probably learn that a little bit. But that's also something that, like putting it another way, you may come across challenges you didn't even anticipate.
True, but this is not meant to scare people, right? It's like we all have to deal with inevitable change in our lives. And I mentioned at the top of this broadcast that 1 out of 3 people right now identify as being part of the gig economy. Probably within 2 or 3 years, that's going to be 1 out of every 2. So if we know that's coming, then that means either you're going to be part of it or you're going to be dealing with someone that is, whether that is someone on your team at work or a family member. So if we can understand maybe a little bit more about it, maybe it's not so scary anymore.
That's true. And I think, let me ask you this. Is it really, really important for someone to be confident and trained and understand the digital marketplace, the internet. Is that really crucial in the gig economy?
Look, I think what's really crucial in the gig economy is your own personal brand, and
Mm.
how that's broadcast can be through things like LinkedIn, but it can also be just from a social, online social network, right? That you happen to be part of. I mean, people may not be aware that right now on Facebook, the cover photo that you have for your profile, which by the way is publicly viewed, can be a video.
Wow, good point. That's I'll take that one to heart. That's
So think about it. If somebody is looking to hire you for something, right? What are they going to do? They're going to Google you. And maybe your LinkedIn profile comes up, and maybe your Facebook profile comes up, and maybe something else comes up that has like a video or pictures or whatever associated with it, which is probably why you shouldn't post pictures from every like craft cocktail hour that you go to on
yeah.
Instagram. You might be sending the wrong message completely about your wonderfulness. But these are some of the things that we kind of consider. And obviously, it depends on your particular niche in an industry, but you got to be able to Google yourself. That's for sure.
Yes, and then also be aware of the fact that people are going to find that, and first impressions mean a lot. Now there are real simple, straightforward gig economies. And I don't mean to oversimplify, but even being an Uber driver has some issues that you have to be aware of. But that's pretty straightforward, and you don't have to get too complicated about it.
Right. So what we're talking about here is some apps and some platforms that one of the things that they do is take away one of the chief concerns of freelancers, which is getting paid, right? If you're part of an on-demand network, like for instance, I happen to be an Airbnb superhost, and I have a place up in a mountain community where people go ski or, go hiking, and usually are taking vacations. I no longer have to deal with the possibility that they might cancel on me last minute, or that their credit card might not go through or something like that. Airbnb takes their money immediately when they book, and then gives me that money when they check in.
Uh-huh.
So
Yeah.
easy peasy.
That's true. Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. That's a neat idea. And I talked to a financial planner here recently, and he says that the majority of his clients, or a lot of his clients who want to continue after retirement, are looking to go into consulting. Now that's a little bit different, but I suppose some of the same concerns is just the same as they would be if you were pursuing the gig economy. You want to be a consultant.
Well, if you're going to be a consultant, chances are your LinkedIn profile means a lot. So those things, all of a sudden you have to ask for recommendations, right? How do I know that you're good at what you do? And then there are also on-demand platforms. Upwork, for instance, is a huge platform for freelance labor all throughout the world. And a lot of consultants are on Upwork. So how are you going to deal with that platform? There's also a profile that you have to fill out there, and you're also judged by your reviews as well.
Something you talked about in the book, which I really liked, it was UVP, your unique value proposition. Is that what it is?
That is, yeah.
Yeah, that is really a good one. Tell us about that.
Okay, so UVP doesn't sound sexy, but it will after I explain it to you.
Yeah,
So
okay.
when we look at how people choose, we have to go back to a standard value proposition. So a value proposition is just an inherent promise that, let's say, a company or you make to your customers or clients and your business partners. And we look at benefit minus cost, right? But sometimes cost isn't money. Sometimes it's because somebody's the most convenient or most available, just right there, the most local, who knows? So when we look at how do I make a choice, we're comparing alternatives, and we're doing this benefit minus cost scenario, sometimes subconsciously, and then we make our choice. Unique value proposition. Now that's the key because we all have a uniqueness. We all have something that we can add. So not only do we have to be able to communicate that basic value proposition, which might be like a technical definition. Like if you can clearly define your services, wow, you're like ahead of 50% of the people out there. But now, can you communicate your uniqueness to me? And that's where that est comes in, right? Like I'm the
Mm-hmm.
best at such and such. And that kind of sounds a little bit ego driven. So let's do it a little bit easier way. I have this wonderful shortcut for everybody, and that's this. I'm awesome because fill in the blank, and that benefits you by fill in the blank.
Say that one more time.
Okay. I'm awesome because, and that benefits you by, right?
Yes.
So sometimes that's done through literally verbal communication or written communication. I might say to someone, I've been on Andrew's show. That makes me awesome. And that benefits you by, when you listen to me, you knew that I knew that I was what I was talking about and you wanted to hire an expert. Yay. Okay. But sometimes it's visual too. Like for instance, if someone goes to chunkofchange.com, it's not a coincidence that I have some well-known brands that have featured me, whether it's Airbnb, because I spoke at the Airbnb Open, or Forbes or Inc. magazine, because they featured me in those publications, right there by my beautiful face. Why do I do that? That subliminally says to you why I'm awesome and how that benefits you. So if you hire me to speak at your corporate event, you really don't have to say much other than I teach digital marketing. I've been featured in these publications, instant credibility.
That's absolutely. And you also talk about putting the best version of yourself up front and center. So that seems to tie in with what you were just talking about.
Well, hopefully it does. I did do one thing though. I do believe in one thing that has changed over the years a little
Oh,
bit.
tell us, please.
I don't Photoshop. This is who I am, right?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Wrinkles and all. So, maybe you're feeling a little bit of anxiety. And, we all know that real estate agent that still uses their picture from 10 years ago
Yeah, yeah.
that was done at like a Glamour Shots Photoshop.
Yeah.
Stop it. Be you, authentically you.
That's a tough one for everyone, especially as we get older. We have to come to grips with the fact that we got to put ourselves out there as who we are and not who we were 20 years ago.
And quite frankly, I want you who you are now because your experience from that 20 years is valuable. One of the things that I'm hoping that companies get, and I get the privilege of speaking to about 120 CEOs here in a couple months. And one of the things that I'm going to ask them to do is take a look at experienced boomers and think about an onboarding process that they would typically reserve only for new workers, that they would only reserve for like management training from some stars from college. Why don't we have star boomers that come in and get a little help with the technology? Get a little help with some things that they need to get caught up on and not feel like they have to know it all. They're missing out on some great talent.
Yeah, you're not going to know it all, and you just have to understand that, but make an effort to know as much as you can. And that kind of talks about this thing that I talk about sometimes is what is your unfair advantage? And I think that, we all have an unfair advantage in one way or another. And so you have to highlight that and learn the things that you're deficient on.
Playing to your strengths is really key, right?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And you also talk about how the experts talk about living your dreams and how that is a bit difficult thing to do in this world of so many choices that we have. But I think, the beginning with the concept of living your dream is at least a starting point. It may have to be massaged and changed, but it's a starting point.
Look, I'm all for living your dream. And I think that the issue that I have is it's an age-old story, right? I'm fighting against the get-rich-quick books. I'm fighting against the people that say, go on Etsy, sell your needlepoint pillow, make $1 million. Go become an Uber driver, make 6 figures. You could do that. You'd probably have no life. And then what happens when Uber decides to have self-driving cars? Then what? So what I'm asking people to do is say, take a look at truly, like, get to understand truly those selling points about yourself that'll make people choose you again and again and again, and keep learning, my friends.
Yep.
Never stop learning.
I like that. Well, look at this is the book. The gig is up. I'll show it to you on a separate screen since it's a little bright on the camera right now. But you'll be able to see it who's watching this, and it's a really informative book. It's now where can people get more? There you go. You got even a better look of it than I do. Where can people get more information about you and so on? And maybe you can just leave us with a final takeaway that for those few who don't get the book can maybe learn.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. Anytime I'm available for you. So chunkofchange.com is my labor of love. It's where I blog about all things gig economy and entrepreneur. And even the gig is up, even this book. This took 3 years to get out of my head and get out there. So it's also kind of a labor of love. I actually still have a day job. I run a creative agency here in Long Beach, California with a team. But chunkofchange.com is an easy place for you to reach me. And I look forward to you reaching out. And as far as the book, it's out and it's available pretty much anywhere. So Amazon, Barnes & Noble, possibly even your local bookstore.
And I think you even touched upon the takeaway is you just got to get started. You got to get doing it and working on it. It may take you longer than you thought, but you got to start.
Progress is an interesting thing, right? We don't have to really, sometimes it is 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. Sometimes it's 5 steps back. But perfect is the enemy of the good, my friends.
I like that. Thank you so much, Olga.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Our guest is Olga Mizrahi, who teaches how we can live and win in a world of increasing choice by becoming the clear, unique fit. Olga, thank you for joining us. We'll be right back. Well, I hope you liked the show and learned a thing or two. The full show will be available on YouTube and at BloomerBoomer. The audio version will be available on Apple Podcasts. We have other shows coming up with some amazing guests, so like us on Facebook and visit us at bloomerboomer.com. Until next time, so long.